The following story is an artistic work of fiction and falsehood. Only a fool would consider it as fact.
Chapter 13.3 2 Steps Forward, Part 2. Hey B. Thread died while I was away making some late dinner. Figured I'd start another just in case anyone has anything else to say or ask. Go ahead, if you like. Or, well, post just about anything that seems related.
Can she make the cat face?
Yes, and she occasionally does so. Well, a natural cat face. A bit of a smirk, not a forced lip-twisting one, when she beats me at DS. It is as cute as one would think it to be.
Oh, awesome. I actually caught a Nurse-kun thread for once. Anyway, man, does she talk at all about what happens to her to cause her loss of limbs? I would assume she doesn't like talking about it at all. Does she talk at all about growing up using prosthetics?
No, she never talks about the accident, or her time in the hospital immediately afterward. She does occasionally talk about her future, but it usually isn't a very pleasant conversation. She's very negative, and often says that she doesn't have a future, that she'll be dead soon too, that nothing matters, that nobody cares, etc. I generally tell her that I care at that point, and it usually causes her to stop talking and look away, and the subject gets changed soon afterward. The resident shrink has said that her talking about it at all, even if it's nothing positive, is still a good thing, so I don't discourage it, but it's painful to see and hear her doing so. I'm not an expert in reading people, but it sure looks and sounds to me like she believes it. It's more rare for her to talk about her prosthetics at all, except for the occasional recounting of her therapy that day, or asking me to help her get into them to do something or another, usually for her DS.
I'm the guy who said to find out what show she liked before the crash. Would it be feasible to get her some DVDs? I had to go and missed your reply.
Well, it might be, but she doesn't really have anything to watch them on at the moment. Maybe if the other suggestion on a portable DVD player pans out, but not much for the time being. Could bring in my laptop some evening, but the home frowns on our bringing in electronics in general. Laptops no exception at all, I'd assume. Nurse-kun, I have to know. Has Amputee-chan been getting out of shape during her hospital stay? Is she losing her gymnast figure? Is she exercising? Can she pop a walnut with her abs? Well, her rehab keeps her in pretty good shape. She does supplementary exercises at home in the day, and she doesn't eat all that much, really, so she's at a healthy weight, at least. She does still have a 7-year-old's metabolism too, of course.
Okay, I know that mindset. I've had people close to me go through serious depression and that sort of nobody cares stage. I'm thankful that at least you were there to support her when she gets to questioning herself.
Yeah, it's a relatively common outlook for kids her age with PTSD, apparently, according to the shrink. More so than could be considered normal, of course, but somewhat understandable if you put yourself in her shoes too, unfortunately.
What's she doing about the school she's missing? Does she do any homework in her room, or is she missing time from school while she's in rehabilitation?
The latter. There isn't really as much of a system in place for someone in her situation as there should be, perhaps since it won't cover/can't handle a private tutor, and nobody on staff is qualified to teach her, and she was at some non-public school for the gifted before the accident, so the link between the public school system and the family services system isn't there to facilitate things. So, at the moment, she's just not being educated in much of anything other than rehab. Yeah, that's what I've been wondering. I'm sure you're sick to death of hearing it, but the way you talked about her early on and the suppository chapter were worrying. Hopefully you just didn't think it through before posting. She's traumatized enough without being sexually abused by the only person she trusts. I'm sure you don't want to harm her, but it's hard to know what to make of the situation. As I've said numerous times, the suppository story was written as satire of all those "man, I totally just fucked this woman/little girl" erotic creepypastas. Since I'm not much of a writer, I guess that didn't come through clearly to you. Sorry, I guess.
Nurse-kun, hi, I'm studying nursing in Rutgers University and I'd like to tell you that you're my hero. Your story really inspired me to pursue my profession. I'm only in my first year in a 4-year program, and I'd like to know how clinicals are and stuff. Oh, and any more advice for nursing school?
Be sure you really want to do it, because unlike some of the other low-paying, treated like shit but get to help people jobs out there, cops and paramedics, you don't get the authority thrill, get to beat up people. Not suggesting all cops are in it for that, just fringe benefits. Get to drive a speeding, flashing, sirening ambulance, or get the adrenaline rush of saving a life on the scene. There aren't a lot of fringe benefits, other than the occasional patient that thanks you for helping them when they needed it. If you can handle all that, and you're still interested, I'm sure you'll make a fine nurse. And if you aren't, you can always go back to school later and try being something else, so hey. Personally, I'd say good for you, and welcome to the fraternity, in a non-gender way.
I've been trying to catch a Nurse-kun thread for weeks. Also, that Gits shit is awesome. I just finished watching it. That I Do song had me crying. Manly tears. But I'd like to chime in on the pedo question. I'm inclined to think it was a sort of forced B thing, though.
The first thing any B-tard would think when they see a lolly would be, please, ing hot. From being on B so much and never really dealing with kids. But when you realize the actual situation, it becomes different. I can't explain that well. I get what you're saying. I admit that I probably had a few jokes and such that ran through my head that the normal person wouldn't. Just a B flex. Still, I like to think it was mostly the B, and less the me.
As a writer, I gotta say that as frustrating as it might be for you to field those sorts of questions, the slight hint of moral ambiguity adds a nice hook to your story. This is B. You look like a saint next to most of us fucked up slackers, so don't fret about it too much.
I agree, and I caught the satire in the suppository story. Almost like being Reese's Puffed, but it had a bit more originality as far as writing goes. Someone suggested the improvised munitions handbook for her in the last thread. Lol. Would be great hearing from you about how the Third Reich guy's bedroom blew up late one night and how bottle of cleaner and batteries are missing. The improvised munition handbook sucks anyways. If you want to get her anything, get her the poor man's James Bond. There are better booby traps than the suicide wish bombs in the improvised munitions handbook. Well, I'm glad someone did. Ah, yes, that may not be the best idea, considering the amount of chemicals scattered throughout the home. But, booby traps, you say? I'm entirely sure I want to come in one night and hear about the morning shift nurse coming in to check on her and getting hoisted up to the ceiling by her ankle via improvised IV tube ropes or something.
The image is a Valentine from an anonymous for a very special girl. Sadly, the full-size image seems lost to time. Dear Nurse-kun, could you print this out and give it to her?
That seems unlikely, unfortunately. Though I did, well, of course, if anyone else wants to give it a go at coming up with something for her, they are more than welcome to try. No deadline tonight. I can make a decision tomorrow. God knows that B and 4chan can come up with some creative shit when it feels like it. God knows that B and 4chan can come up with some creative shit when it feels like it. Any chance of someone putting this little invitation on the wiki's front page?
No word from her parents, huh? How is she interacting with the rest of your staff? Better? Worse? Anonymous corrected himself in a later post. Damn it, I mean grandparents.
No, still no word from her family. Well, her relatives. And she's interacting about the same as she was before, though she had a small incident last week when one of her day nurses dropped her DS. Well, bumped it off a desk, and she had a minor freakout about whether it was broken, which involved some insulting language.
After this is the same poem from chapter 13.2, and no, the poem isn't better the second time around, so I'll just spare you the details. And that concludes chapter 13, 2 steps forward.